everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We've got Luke here. Luke, why don't you just give us a little insight into your background and where you're calling in from?
I am calling in from about an hour north of Toronto. We are in the head office and creative studio of my mind and agency, Ceolin Design.
Nice. Very cool. So I've met Luke through the internet. So Luke had a fantastic Instagram account called Coffee and Kicks that I followed and really enjoyed and linked to some of his personal page and his creative pages. And I reached out to Luke and wanted to just know a little bit about him and about some of the projects. So Luke, why don't you just tell us a little bit about, like, you're a very creative guy. Like, walk us through, how did you kind of get into the creative space and what made you want to be kind of in that creative life?
I think the most important thing to mention is you kind of don't choose that. You're kind of just born with it, I guess. Not that you can't gain it over time, but I think just from day one, I've been kind of the craziest little tinkerer, creative artist, painting stuff, taking toys apart, messing around, always kind of pushing boundaries and either breaking things unintentionally or intentionally just to kind of figure out how stuff works. But yeah, I think that kind of just came from birth, and that just evolved and got more legitimate and more professional as the days and the school years got longer. Ended up into an arts specified high school, which led me to art and design university, and I went to school for industrial design, and that just was a continuing spiral and snowball all the way until where I am right now.
Nice. So walk us through. So, like, I know a ton of creatives who go into college thinking that they're going to work for a Nike or insert, consumer brand that they love, and then they end up, designing widgets or something like that. Like, walk me through, how do you go from university and kind of like, what was the first job, and bearing the lead a little bit. How do we go from kind of university to your first job and then starting your own agency? So give people a little bit of a background on that.
It's a funny transition, and I think it's definitely out of the normal. What my roadmap or my path kind of looked like. I would say that I was in a weird position that even way before university, I knew exactly where and what program I wanted to do, even from like a young kid. Very influenced by my mom, who's always been a creative and a creative director and a leader in a couple different teams and businesses. So I grew up in a kind of corporate, professional, creative environment, which kind of led me to industrial design and all of that. And just with that guidance, I think I just knew from the get-go that it's not really realistic to push for a sole brand or a sole area. You kind of just need to hone your skills and find your interests and then align with people that kind of lock in that interest or give you the room and the space to explore. My funny connection through university kind of actually kickstarted through Coffee and Kicks, which is an Instagram that obviously we connected on. And all throughout my time of school, because I don't live in the city and I had been commuting directly in there, I kind of needed an excuse, I called it, to waste time in the city or spend a longer time downtown or kind of kill time between an 8 a.m. class and a 6 p.m. class. And that's where I kind of fell into coffee shops and exploring the city that way. It was kind of my excuse to try a new neighborhood, meet new people, find new environments, and just get homework done. Through that, the page Coffee and Kicks kind of resurrected through this exploration because I was taking cool photos just because I was enjoying myself, but also I wanted to share it with people. And a good friend of mine who at the time was very much into the same sort of deal, he was like, "Hey, I know you have a bunch of photos, like you're a big coffee guy and you love sneakers. Like, I have this idea for on Instagram." He's like, "Can you throw me some photos if you have any?" I'm like, "Absolutely. Here's an album of 100. Shout out to Coach Bass. He is the OG of Coffee and Kicks. But it took about maybe a week or two for him to realize when I asked, like, "Hey, can I have the login? I want to post a couple myself." He was like, "This is your thing. Like, enjoy it. I just basically got the ball rolling for you." And I appreciate him enormously for that. But kind of that little project that kind of came a passion project for myself just really aligned heavily with kind of my upbringing of just finding that group of people that you love and really perfecting and aligning yourself with that community. I just went so heavily into the sneaker community, the coffee community. I became close with photographers, with creatives, with manufacturers, with designers, all of these different places and people. And that ultimately kind of put me in this golden position to be found by the perfect connection or the perfect company. And in my last year of university, while doing my thesis on coffee, Fiama Canada, which is an awesome Canadian historic company in the city of Toronto and a very big influence on the coffee community in Toronto, had found my content. And here I was, young Italian, somewhat in the city, using a machine that I had purchased from them, creating content, showcasing it in a fun way, tagging them, being excited, showing energy. They reached out and they're like, "Who are you? And come meet us and come hang out at our awesome retail space, which is a space in Toronto." And that was ultimately day one of my position at Fiama Canada, which lasted an incredible 3 years post university. And from the day we met him, from the day I met Mike, who was one of the family members and a new generation of the company, kind of trying to breathe life into the digital, modern, creative world that we live in right now. It was kind of, the conversation was like, okay, when can you work full time? I was like, I need to finish school first. Otherwise, I'll get my head ripped off by my parents. But as soon as I'm free, let's get started. And the day after I graduated, I think even maybe a week before graduation, I was already working full time, which was really awesome. So
Nice. So you went from kind of using Coffee and Kicks, right? Landed your first job. So what were you doing? Like, how were you taking what we'll call, a very long standing business, like making coffee machines, and like, what were you tasked with, and what did you do over those 3 years?
it was a funny progression because it never was the same and it was always ever evolving while I was there, in the best and most exciting way possible. Basically, with the introduction of content creation, photography, videography as kind of the starting point, and then kind of exploring Coffee and Kicks and seeing what I was doing, a big thing that they wanted to tackle and kind of get better at was just their online footprint. They wanted to have beautiful visuals. They wanted to show the incredible people that they work with, the countless decade-old companies and restaurants and locations that they've been supporting since the beginning of the brand. And they kind of just wanted to dip their foot into that avenue. And I think as I spent more time there, initially as a part-time worker while I was finishing school, and then slowly as it became a full-time employee, it was a matter of like, I'd be in the office and just notice things that I was like, oh, that sign, something is off with the graphic there. Or like, we should maybe change that or improve this. Or, hey, did you guys think about this? Or, hey, what if we added these to the showroom? Or what if we started printing these things for events? Or that kind of spiraled, just because, I mean, I'm a creative thinker, and I mean, whether it's my job or not to kind of explore ideas, I'm always kind of just thinking of ways to improve or utilize my talents or my interests into helping people. And as I kind of spent more time there just taking photos and being their online social media creative, I think they sort of started to realize the multidisciplinary abilities. I don't know if that's the right way to use that word, but I think they kind of realized what I could accomplish and the value in letting me kind of roam free and sort of just set my own goals and start to pinpoint things that I thought that were important from a creative standpoint. I think one of the big reasons why that sort of happened was I was the first creative they had ever hired in decades of family operation. It had always been a very tight team. They always, and still do, pride themselves on just quality service, product, and execution. And advertising and putting themselves out there was never really important or crucial because they had such an incredible business. But I mean, in this day and age, it's something that you just need and want, and it's important to have, especially when you're working with new clients or engaging new communities or stepping and putting your toe into new avenues. And they kind of just realized the importance of everything, and that kind of put me in the position to take over a creative director role after I think I had been there for a year at that time, and from there it was history. We just kind of went headfirst into a million different things.
Nice. Very cool. So walk me through going from kind of that first job into where, starting your own agency and kind of like making that leap of faith, and what that was like, and sort of how are you kind of going about finding work, and how can people kind of think about you in terms of when they're needing, creative direction? when to call you?
In a similar arc to all the other things, I think the important thing to mention is just I've always been a very diversely creative person, and I've always touched a lot of different avenues, whether it's photography, painting, product design, graphic design, all these different things. And I think I've always just been very outgoing and open to people about like, hey, I love doing these things. Like, hey, check out what I made, or look at what I did here, or have you seen this, or connecting with friends and family on stuff I've done or stuff I want to do. I think my entire life, I've just been teeing myself up to be kind of the creative guy in a lot of people's mind. And as I've gotten older and as the work I started to produce got more professional and more polished and a lot more valuable, I think as I was leaving university, starting to work at Fiamma, I think a lot of people that I've really grown up with and spent a lot of time with started to realize like, hey, I really would love you to do this. Hey, can you help me with that? Can you help me design this thing? Can you help me create this display? Can you help me make this packaging? It has always been just I don't know if you really do this, but can you help? And it's almost always a yes. And I mean, like putting myself in an industrial design position, it's not necessarily the avenue in which you apply design, but it's more so just your thought and approach to creating something useful, impactful, and beautiful. And I think that alone has been the major pushing point for me starting something of my own. I think it has always been overwhelming to manage the amount of people that ask me to do things. And I think I've had a iPhone notes list on my phone of requests or inquiries of just like, hey, this person asked me this project on this date, roughly in this theme, reach out one day or say yes one day. And that list just got way too long and it got way too cool. And the projects at the bottom just got way more interesting and way more engaging. And I had been at Fiamma for 3 years at that point. I enjoyed every moment of it. We had done a million different projects in a variety of avenues that only just improved my confidence and my ability to kind of jump into unique situations and tackle unique problems. And as I sort of got a little bit more confident and the asks from friends and family and people that I've met over the years just got more significant and more intense, I sort of said, I'm a young person. I got nothing to lose. I mean, if there's a moment to take a risk and start something crazy and be in control and really say yes to all these things that I've not had the time, energy, or ability to say yes before, now's the time. And I had 5 really, really powerful opportunities kind of at my fingertips. And I called all 5 people and I said, hey, theoretically, if I were to do something on my own where I could commit fully to this project and executing it in the next 3 to 6 months, would you be interested in starting tomorrow? And it took me 15 minutes to make all 5 calls because they were all immediate yeses. And that was the moment where I said, I've gotten about 72 more asks and I've only gone through the first 5. And these were the most impactful or the potentially the most impactful. And if even 10% of the remainder of these calls go well or asks go well, I'm silly not to take this opportunity to try and build something and be in charge and have the benefit and the kind of satisfaction of being in control of what and when and how I do everything moving forward. And that was kind of the inception of jumping into this absolutely crazy piece of work.
Nice. Very cool.
Massive labor of love, major.
Nice. Very cool. Can you talk about any of the projects that you've, been involved with since the inception of your own agency?
2 really awesome projects that I'd love to talk about are 2 of my bigger moments so far in the last now 13 months, one of which has been working with Anthem Entertainment, major business in Toronto, with seriously an international presence. They've just been really, really interested in getting as creative and having as much fun as possible. And they have an incredible team of musicians, producers, artists, and songwriters. And they have a lot of ideas and a lot of creative ambition, but their disconnect was putting those ideas into motion and kind of legitimizing or getting them to reality. And our role for the last 13 something months, they were one of the first 5 calls. And basically in the past couple of months, we've done everything from event coverage and year-long recaps for internal parties. We've done merchandise, we've done trucker hats and clothing, we've done installations and creative works, and we've done almost everything under the sun. And that has just been the absolute beginning. I think we have a year full planned of 150 more projects that I am massively worried and excited to take on right away. And that's been an awesome kind of journey so far. On the flip side, something that is somewhat similar but very different in its own way. And I think the agency as a whole, every project, every client is vastly unique and exciting in their own way. We got another opportunity to work directly with a LMP2 Le Mans race team in the IMSA series. And again, just an awesome crew, an incredibly dedicated organization that is performing at one of the highest levels. But the disconnect of knowing what they want and knowing what they want to do and produce and create and share, and not knowing how to share it with the community and build that network has been an awesome project where we've been able to follow them initially for one of their local Toronto Grand Prix, where we created a mini series and a documentary, a mini doc on the series, on the team, on their process, their dedication, their excitement, their kind of behind the scenes look of what it takes to really operate on the highest level on track. And that one experience, which was one of the coolest and biggest projects we worked on last year, kind of spiraled into this crazy opportunity to being able to capture them for the entire season this year. So wow. We are in the process now of being able to be present for every race of the entire season this year across Canada and United States, behind the scenes, in the trailer, in the paddock, on track when allowed, in the pits. And we're basically capturing every moment. We're breathing life into the brand. We're kind of focusing in on three different things of making an impactful impression online, making an impactful impression in person physically, and then we're trying to implement a couple experimental experiences to kind of engage fans, make memories, be impactful on site and on track and on race weekends to kind of start to build the brand and build the community and build the excitement and get all eyes on them. So it's been, again, started off on a really big project, and somehow we've quadrupled the opportunity in a single year. And now it's, again, something very stressful, but I'm so glad and so happy to be part of it.
You know, you talk about the in-person experience, and I'll equate, what you're talking about with race car driving. And I had the opportunity to go to my first live golf event. And so I was expecting kind of just like a golf tournament with music. And there's been controversy in America because it's, not the PGA, the quiet golf. And like I said, I was just expecting just loud music. And what I really saw was two things. It was like the sort of similar experience to race car driving of like you choose your driver, or I'll compare it to like soccer of like having your team kit. And then they had the installs. So they had this like community fan zone, and every team had their own like little area. And I brought my daughter on the weekend, and they had goats for the range goats where you could literally see the goats, and it was all branded and really cool. And now she's a range goat fan. We got range goat stickers over here. But I think that is like in this digital world of your phone and consuming things and feeling part of a brand, it's nice to hear that you're doing both, the visual stuff and then, the virtual stuff online, but also like thinking about the install. So that'd be cool. And I'm pretty sure, the link that you sent me is sort of the tip of the iceberg of in advance. So what we'll do is make sure that we put the link in of, it was like what, like a 7-minute documentary, 5-minute documentary you sent me?
That's episode 1 of 4. So they're ranging from 5 to, I think, maybe up to 10 minutes each. It's kind of the progression of race weekend, what it takes to practice and set up qualifying, pre-race prep, and then race day. So that is one sort of example of what a weekend can look like. But for example, we just attended 24 Hours Rolex at Daytona, and like same series, same race team, same process, wildly different experience. Just like absolutely mind blowing. And that stuff is getting launched hopefully in the next week or so. So keep an eye on the accounts, on the pages. We had a roller coaster of a experience there, to say the least, for those who follow IMSA and know what happened. But I'll leave that for the doc and for you guys to kind of see what the outcome was. But nonetheless, exciting and awesome experience, and we're excited to share it. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's talk about sneakers. Like, let's go back to this a little bit. So,
I like sneakers.
let me ask you, because I was gonna give you a heads up. I was gonna ask this question, but I said no. So, give me your favorite pair, and give me your top 5 in your collection, and what's your white whale?
God, funny enough, have a running list of about 40 pairs that are either physically impossible to acquire or just like the most normally boring pairs ever that I just love the look of. And I've always been updating the list. And it's like, for me, it's impossible to put a finger on it. But I would say that my number one pair has to be Mars Yard's Tom Sachs. Everything about that shoe, I've been a massive Tom Sachs fan for years, even just entering university. Just as from like a creative standpoint, he is an incredible artist. I love his approach. I love the stuff that he does, but then to apply that mindset and his style and his experience to a sneaker, which is another world that I just absolutely love with, let alone Nike, which is the gold standard. It's just a absolute clash of all of my favorite things. I think that shoe kind of embodies what it means to really put story creative into a physical item. I love every piece that kind of informed that before the shoe came out and everything he's done afterwards. I think that is definitely my all-time favorite. Personally, I have a pair of the 2.0s that I've worn like crazy, and I don't regret for a second the amount that I probably shouldn't have paid for however many years ago. But in my mind right now, like that one pair has X in at whatever value that, like, thank God I bought it then. Otherwise it'd be physically impossible to acquire now. But yeah, that's got to be my number one in the collection. Not to answer everything else yet.
You know what? Like, I know all the shoes you're talking, or I knew the 2 shoes. I've been really itching to get. They came out a couple of years ago. It was his like general purpose shoes, which is like an elevated like 70s style runner, but something about it looks great. And like, he came out with like a white. It was like a gray with blue, and then he came out with yellow, puke yellow, and I kind of want the puke yellow. I don't know where I went.
I've got all 3 of them.
Really?
I've got. There are a couple unreleased kind of like pairs, colorways floating around, but the 3 that have come out, they're again like on the spectrum of what I love in reality, like good design, functional, and still creative, exciting, and impactful for people that aren't sneakerheads. They check the box. Like, they're comfortable, they are functional, they're not like outrageously impossible to get. So I'm totally okay with just absolutely cooking them. And okay, if I got to get another pair in 2-3 years, that's fine for me. And they're still exciting and eye-catching enough where people who don't love sneakers or don't care about sneakers are like, what are those? Like, what is this? Like, engaging, and it's kind of like gravitating, which I love in a sneaker. So agreed completely. Again, that's just makes it more desirable for me to want to support the guy.
Nice. So what's on your hit list? What's your next purchase, knowing the release schedule? What do you got your eye on?
Well, considering what we just talked about, he just announced September 2025 that he's doing a 3rd version. I immediately sent that text to about 30 people being like, if anybody knows how to get these, please, I'm telling you 3 seasons in advance.
I want to put my name out. Yeah.
That's going to be something that is I'm gunning for heavily. One shoe that I've been after for years that I think is probably has been my white whale for a long time has been the Pata Chlorophyll Air Max 1s that they did for their, I think, 20th anniversary in the mid 2010s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe sooner than that, probably sooner. But that's been an all-time shoe for me. Again, as an industrial designer, Air Max 1, that bringing Tinker Hatfield, the kind of storyline of that shoe coming to reality and what it means to sneaker culture in my mind is the pinnacle. I know maybe a controversial statement, but I mean, Jordan 1 Chicago is the pinnacle. I would argue that maybe a OG Air Max 1 has the same importance value. I mean, as a aspiring shoe dog, that shoe is at the utmost top of the list in terms of design and impact and innovation and its kind of role in sneaker culture. That being said, I'm a big fan of classics, clean colorways. I'm absolutely loving that Jordan, Nike, and all of these, I mean, Adidas, all Asics, all of these brands are starting to kind of bring back classics in their original form, retroing shoes that we've not seen in years. And I am absolutely loving it because I've had on that list, try to find this retro, this retro, this retro, this retro. Like for the longest time, neutral grays have always been on my list as like a clean, absolute classic. Thank God they came out and they're just like Jordan 3s, Jordan 2s, all of these Jordan 4s are coming back out. They're bringing back breads. They're doing all the black cement 3s. They're doing all of these different Nikes that are coming out. The Mac Attacks were awesome. Like all of these different little kind of classics that, I mean, have importance in kind of the evolution of design in footwear and also sneaker culture. I'm like eating all this up and I hope they don't stop because I think it's a controversial thing because people think it's maybe not something that is good for sneaker culture, but who cares? If people want it, it should exist and accessible.
I do think that from what I've read and listened to online from Elliot, the new CEO of Nike, is it's not that they're going to discontinue retros. They're just going to dial it back a little bit. And I think they're going to push forward towards sports and not. So they were going gender, then shoe, then sport. And now they're going to go sport, then shoe, then gender. So they're trying to go back to like sports and making it a better product for the athlete, which will be interesting to see. I don't know. I love like all of the shoes. There, you know what really got me in trouble is watching the Tinker Hatfield Netflix documentary of all the shoes he did. I was like, oh man, I want to spend some money. So
yeah, sorry, just to answer your question, but that one pair that I've wanted forever is that Pata Air Max 1, and they just retroed it last year, and I paid way too much online for it. I'm a little bit upset because they've tanked completely and I've double paid for it, but I bought them in the first week and I said, if these are as valuable or cost anywhere as much as the originals, I'm going to be biting my tongue for the next 10 years that I didn't buy them, but those are them.
Nice. Very cool. So, let's talk about like your special project that we were, jamming on before we started recording, but let people know about what you've been kind of cooking up and a little bit about the inspiration for where it came from.
I think cooking up might be too short term of a description of this project. This is more of like a recipe in progress for about 2 years now. But maybe I'll talk about it first before showing it. But again, just with the interest of kind of always wanting to mash together all the things I love in a bunch of different ways, creating a product to symbolize and celebrate Coffee and Kicks, which has been a enormous passion project of mine for the last X amount of years of my life. And the amount of people and opportunities and experiences I've had just solely by giving that page attention has been more than anyone could wish for, even solely as a sneakerhead, like in a compact viewpoint. But as a whole, that page has had such an awesome impact in my life. And I've always wanted to just create product to celebrate it, whether one person likes it or 1,000 people like it. And I've always been so precious with this concept because I want it to be as important and as special as it feels to me. And I mean, I'm a big hat guy. I know I'm not wearing one right now, but love truckers, love to dress up, love to put a fit together. And I've always wanted to do a custom trucker with something that's my own on it and that has to do with the page. And I ultimately landed on doing a very beautiful homage to an important avenue of my life.
So, all right. So we're recording this with video, but there will be some people that just listen to audio. So just give a little bit of like context of like what the hat design is and kind of like what you did to bring this together.
Yeah. So this hat is essentially a love letter to Coffee and Kicks and the community and the people that I've been so honored to be a part of. It's a custom sample kind of coffee coffee crema / latte colored trucker hat with a white puffy front. And essentially it's paying homage to the Wings Jordan 1 logo, which is, again, just an iconic symbol in sneaker culture with the subtle twist of instead of Jordan brand, we've got coffee.
Such good branding. You did such a good job.
And the establishing date, and instead of a basketball, we've got a little coffee with a Jordan 1 dipping into it as a little homage to my constant battle of telling people to wear their shoes and not to be precious with them. They're just objects.
And what's on the back tagline again?
Yeah, so just to go further, we've got sipping crema and, again, scuffing shoes. Put them on your feet, wear them, don't be baby them. And then we got the inside.
So that tag, so for those that don't know, we didn't talk about it yet.
Yeah.
One of the cool things, I think you did this during COVID lockdown, but not sure. You put out a coloring book that I downloaded, and my daughter and I have both printed physical copies and put those on the fridge. And then I got her an iPad, and she now colors it virtually. Yeah. But the coloring book was fantastic. It was like 50, 60 pages. How long did that take you to build?
Probably longer than it should have. But again, just COVID happened and I was really heartbroken with my inability to meet with people, hang out, talk to coffee lovers, go to coffee shops, that I kind of was spending so much time at home kind of thinking about the page and all these things. And I wanted to maybe make something that could help people stay connected and pass the time a little bit and build something fun for people to kind of share and get creative with. And again, as a creative, I've always wanted to make a custom shoe, and ultimately the idea came about. My older brother, who's a couple years older than me, is a big car guy. Just randomly, he's like, I'm so bored. He's like, I want to color in some pictures of cars. I'm like, you're 30. He's like, whatever. He's like, I want to do so. He's like, wanted to do something funny like that. He's just like, what else are we going to do right now? We've been home for 2.5 weeks. And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of a cool idea. And if I built a couple artworks of different shoes and just like gave people an avenue to kind of just like go wild. And that kickstarted like a week of research. I found and made about, I think you're right. It was like 30 or 40 pairs of shoes kind of in vector, black and white 2D, just side profiles of the shoe, and kind of built this little coloring book with something on it that brought it back to Coffee and Kicks. I had a coffee cup and I had a shoe, and every page you could pick a shoe, go crazy, design something and download it. And that was just, I wanted it to exist just because of that experience. I was like, that's actually kind of funny and fun. And I was like, there's no reason why other people can't have that. So that was, the inside tag is a little homage to the coloring book. Each page essentially looked loosely like that, where you had a different shoe in the coffee and you kind of had an opportunity to kind of go wild. And I mean, I still get people tagging me in little drawings and photos that they've done on that page thing. That was, again, just no kind of intention of where it would go. It was just something I wanted to exist. And that is a major reason why we are connected today here.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
You never know what you put out will come back to you in a positive way, which I love.
It's awesome. I know you're debating when you're going to release the hat, but we'll be making sure that we share the notes, share the links when the hat is available. Look fantastic. Can't wait to get my hands on one. Tell people where we can find you and your company and your projects online.
So you can find everything Coffee and Kicks related is @_Coffee and Kicks on Instagram. You can find me at Luke CEO on Instagram as well. And then also the agency is Ceolin Design. We've got a landing page there. And because of this podcast and because of the momentum and the excitement that I've gotten, the incredible encouragement from Reed to just not baby this thing to an insane degree, they will be available on the website very soon. So we will provide some more context information. I mean, I'll pass along the information. We'll get a little special link possibly or a coupon code for you guys as well specifically. So it's a little bit more approachable. But yeah, I've wanted to launch these things. I've had them now in my possession. I've got 300 in 2 boxes on the shelf over there. They've been here since September 2022. And just work and parlayed with a very inconveniently planned trip and delivery of these hats have just every moment postponed my ability to give them attention. And I've just babied the project so much that now we want to put them out. We want to get them in people's hands. And then maybe part 2, we'll get something going.
Perfect. Well, Luke, thanks for joining us and really appreciate it. And looking forward to seeing the launch of the hats. Can't wait to get my hands on one. We'll be sure to share all the links where to find you online.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.